Hey guys, it's Justine here from I Should Read That, and today I am bringing you my July TBR. So TBRs are hard. I can make them, I can't stick to them, but I do have a ton of really good stuff that I need to read for August and for September, so I am going to do my best to stick to this TBR for once. Apparently it's ARC-August. I might accidentally participate in that. I just don't know. I have a ton of review copies that I'm planning on reading next month. I also have one of my own books that I am planning on reading, which is one of my current reads. So without further ado, I'm just gonna go ahead and get started. There are not a lot of physical copies on this TBR. A lot of them are going to be from NetGalley. So the first book that I have on my TBR is the only one that I bought myself. This is actually a very rare reread for me. This is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. This is my much beloved copy. This is actually my signed copy. And the reason that I am reading this instead of the lovely new hardback of this book that I got for myself, which you will see in my July book haul, is because the hardback is 1,000 pages long and is super heavy and I'm not able to actually hold it up. So it's really just for show and it matches the rest of my editions. So I am going to be buddy reading this book with my friends Amber, Cassidy, and Stephanie, along with a couple of other people who are a little ahead of us, my friend Angela and my friend Jade. We have this little group chat going on and we are all either rereading in order to catch up with the series because the next book comes out in November, or we are reading for the first time. So this is actually my third read through of this book. I have tried to catch up with the series in the past and it has not worked. So I am going to be reading this for the third time. The second time as a physical book. I read it for the second time as an audiobook. So I did physical read, audiobook, and now physical read. Then I read Words of Radiance once, so that will be coming up soon. Hopefully we will buddy read that as well. And then it'll be my first time reading Oathbringer, and hopefully that'll bring us right up to the end of November because that is when The Rhythm of War comes out. So this is a book that is truly epic in scope. I don't really know how to describe it except to say that it takes place in a world that is kind of constantly battered by high storms, which are these incredibly destructive, incredibly powerful storms that have all these different kinds of magical properties to them, and we follow a bunch of characters who all realize that their destinies converge and they all end up kind of working together eventually. They range in class from a slave all the way up to the uncle of the current king, who's also the brother of the assassinated king, who gets kind of killed at the very beginning of this book and sets off this whole series of events. So this book is marvelous. I really love it. I am doing a reading vlog for this book and hopefully for the rest of them, which you will be able to catch whenever I finish it. I am not quite far enough yet. I'm behind on our buddy read, I have to confess. Sorry guys. But I am hoping to catch up and finish this book early on in August. So moving on to review copies, one of the very exciting books that I have that I say I'm currently reading. I'm 50 pages in, but The Way of Kings is kind of taking up all my time, so I won't really be able to get to this properly until I finish that, but I am very much enjoying To Sleep in a Sea of Stars by Christopher Paolini. He is the author of the Aragon series, the Inheritance series, I think of 5 books, which I've read the first one when I was like 15 and I loved, and I haven't read the rest of them because they're not quite to my taste anymore, but I'm very excited for this book, which comes out on the 15th of September from Tor Books. They were kind enough to send me a limited proof and I have to say I am loving it so far. So I think this turns into a very sprawling epic story. I mean, it's absolutely massive, so that would not surprise me at all, but we follow a character named, I believe her name is Kira, and she is a scientist who's part of a kind of pre-terraforming team going out to colonize space. Her life is just about to change. She gets engaged to be married. It's all going to be lovely. And then she makes an incredible discovery that sort of kicks open the doors to everything else that's going to happen in this book. It sounds marvelous. It sounds wonderful. I am intentionally keeping myself as in the dark as I possibly can because I have a sneaking suspicion that this is going to be a wonderful book to discover on my own. So I'm hoping to finish this in the month of August. We'll see what happens. Not really sure. It is quite long. I think it's 800 something. 880 pages or so, so I will probably be working through it a little bit slowly with some other stuff on the side, but we'll see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to this. My next review copy is the sequel to one of my favorite books of 2019. This is The Sorcery of a Queen by Brian Naslund, the second book in the Dragons of Terra series. The first book is Blood of an Exile, which completely took me by surprise with how much I absolutely adored it. This is definitely what I would describe as mantasy. Unfortunately, not my phrase. I can't take credit for that, even though I love it. Very man fantasy, essentially. But at the same time, it also has loads of really strong women. It is a super fun series. It has a lot of the kind of vibes of a classic fantasy story, but has been updated for a modern audience, thank God, because reading some of those classic stories, as much as I love them, can be a little bit tiresome in the way that women are treated especially, but Queen Ashlyn especially in this series, the queen in the title of this book, is an absolute badass, and I love her so much. So basically, in the first book, we follow a character named Bershin, and he is a dragon slayer. Not a job that you really want. He was sort of sentenced to become a dragon slayer after committing this horrible crime in his past, and essentially, if you become a dragon slayer, it's a death sentence. Dragon slayers don't really stand up well against dragons, and he is very unusual in the fact that he has survived for many years. He's kind of become this legendary character. So in that first book, the king calls him back to court because he has to ask him to do something for him. The king, of course, being the person who sentenced him to become a dragon slayer in the first place. So that book was so fun. I really enjoyed it. I just absolutely devoured it, and I cannot wait for this one. This also comes out from Tor Books in early August, I believe on the 4th of August, which is a huge release day. The next one that I have a physical copy of the proof somewhere in this room, but I've been filming all evening and there's just books everywhere, so I don't know where it is. But this is The Boneshard Daughter by Andrea Stewart. This is one of my most anticipated books of the year. It is a debut fantasy novel and it just looks absolutely incredible. I am so excited to crack on with this book because I've read a couple of chapters and I'm absolutely loving it so far. This book follows multiple points of view, but really it sounds like from the back copy, the main one is the princess. She's the daughter of the emperor, and the emperor will not name her as his heir because she is unable to regain her memories from her childhood before a childhood illness nearly killed her and just kind of gave her this horrible amnesia for everything that happened before her sickness. So he doesn't trust her to be able to run the empire, and also she is not able to be taught this bone shard magic because her father won't teach it to her because she doesn't have her memories. So basically this magic takes a shard of bone, and there's a bone shard taken from behind the ear of every citizen in the empire, willingly or not, and it's basically put into this construct that's kind of created out of various bits of animals, and it follows simple commands, and that's kind of what keeps the order of the empire. So there's rebellion brewing at the gates, and she has to decide what she is going to do in order to save her country. We have other storylines as well that I've not really gotten into yet. If you want to see a review of this book, Judith from Dead Good Book Reviews loved it, so I will link that down below so you can go ahead and check that out and you can hear a little bit more. It is one of the books that I am most excited for this year. It comes out in September from Orbit Books, and it just looks so good. I'm so excited to read it. Next up, we have The Doors of Eden by Adrian Tchaikovsky, who you know is one of my favorite authors. I don't know a huge amount about this one intentionally, but what I do know is it has lesbian cryptid hunters in it. what more do you need to know, honestly? So basically we have these two women who are best friends turned lovers, and they are obsessed with kind of hunting cryptids and finding these sort of mythical creatures. So they go in search of a particular cryptid, I believe in the south of England. One of them disappears, and it's this huge trauma for the surviving one, and 5 years later I believe she shows up again. So that's really all I know about this book. I'm super excited to read it. I happen to have a copy of the ebook, but also an audiobook, which I'm very excited to listen to. I think that's gonna be my first NetGalley audiobook. It just sounds like such a great read, and I love his sci-fi, so this is gonna be a definite win. The Doors of Eden comes out from Tor Books, I believe, in August, so this is one that I have to get to real soon. The next book that I have on my list is The Year of the Witching by Alexis Henderson. This one came out in July, at the end of July, I believe. And it's one that I don't know a huge amount about, but I'm pulling up the description for you now. So it follows a young woman living in a rigid and puritanical society who discovers dark powers within herself in this stunning feminist fantasy debut. So this book takes place in a land called Bethel, where the prophet's word is law. So our main character is Emmanuel Moore, and her very existence is blasphemy in this land because her mother was pregnant by an outsider of a different race. So that kind of cast her out of her once proud family, and she's been sort of cast into disgrace. So Emmanuel does her best to worship the Father, follow the holy protocol, and lead a life of submission, devotion, and absolute conformity like all the other women in the settlement. So she ends up getting kind of lured into the forbidden darkwood that surrounds Bethel, where the first prophet once chased and killed 4 powerful witches. Their spirits are still lurking there, and they bestow a gift upon Emmanuel. This sounds great. This sounds amazing. It recently was read by Tamora Pierce, and she loved it, which is like big thumbs up. It bumped way up my TBR because of that. It was one that I've heard really good things about anyway, but I mean, if Tamora Pierce likes something, then I'm definitely gonna read it. So this sounds like an excellent debut. It sounds like it's gonna have a lot of kind of elements of almost historical fiction meets sort of dystopian fiction in a really interesting way. It sounds wonderful. I'm really looking forward to it. I have a sneaking suspicion that it's gonna be a great one for the fall. The next book that I have on my list is Raybearer, and this is by Jordan Ifuko. So this one sounds like an amazing, I believe it's a debut YA fantasy novel, and I'm really excited to read it. It's another one that I don't know a huge amount about, but I'm very much looking forward to it. This is another NetGalley audiobook that I have, so I'm going to be sort of devouring this one very quickly, hopefully, and I'm really looking forward to it because it just sounds like a wonderful read. So our main character is Tari Sai, and she's always longed for the warmth of a family. She's sort of raised in isolation with a very absent mother who's called the Lady. So her mother, the Lady, sends her to the capital of the global empire to compete with other children to be chosen as one of the Crown Prince's Council of 11. So if she's picked, she'll join the others, and this will kind of create this amazing sort of comforting, warm family unit that she has always been craving her entire life. However, her mother has compelled her with a magical wish that she must obey, which is to kill the Crown Prince once she gains his trust. This sounds wonderful. It sounds like a really fun YA fantasy book. I have been getting more into YA fantasy over the past few months or so. I went through a huge slump of it for a long time, and I'm now getting back into it, and I think that this is going to be one that I really enjoy. The last book that I'm putting on my TBR, although I will undoubtedly read many more, is Seven Devils by Elizabeth May and Laura Lamb. So I've never read anything by Elizabeth May, who I know writes YA kind of historical fantasy, but I have read books by Laura Lamb, and you may remember that Goldilocks, which is her release from earlier this year, I absolutely adored, so I'm very excited for this book. It sounds like it's going to be so much fun. I think it has some shades of kind of Star Wars to it, which is very exciting. So it is the first book in a feminist space opera duology that follows 7 resistance fighters who will free the galaxy from the ruthless Tholosian Empire, or die trying. So all of these characters, I don't want to know a huge amount about this book before I go in, but basically all of these characters kind of possess the knowledge and capabilities to bring the Empire to its knees. So this sounds great. This sounds like one I'm really gonna love. I am starting to get more into sci-fi once again. I tend to go back and forth with it, but I'm really enjoying the sci-fi books that I'm reading right now, and I think this is gonna fit in perfectly, so I'm very, very excited to read this one. So those are some of the books that I'm hoping to read in the month of August. We'll see what I actually read. I don't really know. We'll get there eventually, but I do think that this is going to be a very, very review copy heavy month. In the comments below, I would love to know if you have read any of these books, if they are in your TBR, or what you are planning to read next month. I post bookish content to this channel fairly frequently, so go ahead and hit subscribe, check back soon, and I will see you next time.